Hello and welcome to Creative by Nature. My name is Donna. Okay, so for our first DIY, I have this battery operated taper candle from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to be using this espresso acrylic paint and I'm going to give it a coat. I'm going to be creating a primitive old country farmhouse look for these candles. So I've allowed the paint to dry and now I'm taking some matte finish decoupage glue and I'm adding about a 1/4 cup to a container. Within that container, I am going to add some of my brown paint, a little bit of a walnut stain, and some coffee. Now, the coffee I am using has been dehydrated. It's actually used coffee grounds. I'm not using my good stuff for this. And then I am going to be giving it all a stir. You can adjust the color as needed by adding more dye or paint. You can even use a different color like red or green. Primitive candles come in all different kinds of colors. Now using a paintbrush, I am going to dab on a thin layer of my decoupage and coffee mixture. You don't want to apply it too thick to start as it will drip down the candle. Now, if you do want to add drips, I have seen some people use hot glue or even real wax. So now I'm just using a blow dryer to set that thin layer in place, and then I'm going to continue to cover my entire candle with my decoupage and coffee mixture. I'm working in sections. That way here I can get a nice coverage and I don't get it too thick in one spot or risk having anything drip and clump on me. So once the candle is completely covered with your first layer, you can stick it into some sort of base. I'm just using a pot with floral foam and allow it to dry well. Once the candlestick is dry, you can then go in and give the candle a second layer of your decoupage and coffee mixture. If you're new here, I want to say welcome and I'd love for you to join my community by tapping on the subscribe button along with the bell to keep up to date with everything I have to share. Continue to add your mixture and dry as you go, and once you have it all covered, allow to dry well. So here's my candle with the 2 layers of the mixture. Now I am going to be applying 2 coats of the decoupage glue, and this time it just has some stain and paint in it, no coffee grounds, and I'm going to seal everything in. This will also create a more waxy finish. Again, I am using my blow dryer just to heat set it, and then I'm going to set it aside and allow it to dry really well. This video is part of the Useful DIY Challenge, Festive Lights DIY. It's hosted by Mom from MomDas Life Handmade, and her co-host is Sewell from My Style, My Colors. Their channel links as well as the playlist will be down in my video description below. Please check it out. All right, so now it's time to decorate the candles. I created 2 and I open up the bottom and I'll be adding some batteries. And I actually am going to be using 2 jars as my candle holders. So I'm going to use 2 pieces of dry floral foam. And I just made a little indent, and then I am going to be using a knife and cutting a portion out to create a hole. I then place my candle into that hole. So I want my foam to sit nice and flat on the bottom of the jar, so I am just cutting a little bit off the bottom, and then I'm going to generously apply some hot glue and stick it to the bottom of the jar. I do the same for both jars. Okay, so now I'm going to be using some Spanish moss. You can use green moss as well. And I'll be using a craft stick And I am going to cover up the foam on the inside of the jar, and I'm going to use the craft stick to push the moss down into place. Just remember to keep the hole open where you need to stick your candle in. Continue to add as much moss as needed. You can use some scissors to trim off any of the excess. Okay, so now that part's completed, I am going to be adding some jute twine and a little bit of lace. I'm just cutting off a length of the jute and lace, and I'm going to wind the jute around the top portion of the jar. And then I'll just be tying that in a knot. And then using the lace, I am just going to be tying a simple little bow and then using some hot glue and adhering it to the middle of the jute twine. You can decorate these jars any way you'd like. You could add some greenery, even some little bells or pine cones. I decided to keep mine simple. You could glue your candlestick into place if you'd like. I chose not to, so the batteries could be easily accessible. I have wanted to try and recreate these primitive candles for a long time, and I thought this pillar LED candle from Dollar Tree would be perfect to try out. I'm just going to be making my coffee mixture a little bit darker for this one. Now, this candle has a wax on the outside, and I didn't need to paint out the wax with another color. So I'm just going to be applying the mixture directly on top of the wax. It actually worked really well. I also used another paint color just to darken it up just a tiny bit more. I used the same procedure as the tapers. As you can see, these turned out really, really well. I love the looks of these. These are going to be great for my Christmas decor. To decorate them, I have this cotton fabric, some cheesecloth, and I stained them with coffee, some jute twine, and a few embellishments. So one of the candles from Dollar Tree I am going to wrap with the cheesecloth, and I'm going to be using some hot glue. I'm not applying the hot glue directly onto the candle as I did not want to melt the wax that's underneath. This way here too, if I decide to change out the decorations on it per season, I can do that still, or if I want to change the colors. These candles are going to be great for a rustic old country farmhouse look for the Christmas season. Now I'm going to be using some twine, and I'm just going to wrap that around. And then I'm going to be tying my jute string off with a knot. Before I trim off any excess string, I have decided to add my twigs into place. I'm going to add a little dab of hot glue, and then I am going to use the long strands of the jute string and tie a bow. Again, you can embellish these candles any way you like. Here I have a pine cone that I picked from outside in nature, and I'll just hot glue that into place. For the next candle, I'm going to be using my cotton fabric, and again, it is coffee stained as well. And again, I'll be using some hot glue to attach it. I am not using the hot glue directly onto the candle, just onto the fabric, so I don't melt the wax, and if I decide to change it out, I can. I'm using the jute twine again. You could use any kind of trim. You could even use that beautiful lace that we were using. I'm using a bit of faux foliage. You could even use some real if you choose. And I'm just using a dab of hot glue, and then I'm gonna tie a bow over top. I've decided to use this pretty little wood embellishment, and I'm going to distress it with some ink, and then I'm going to use a dab of hot glue and put that into place. I really love the way this looks. Okay, and on to our next DIY. I have these beautiful star string lights from Dollar Tree. I again am going to use my espresso brown paint, and I'm going to give each starlight 2 coats of the acrylic paint. Allow it to dry well in between and give a coat to both the front and the back. I'm trying to recreate those primitive starlights that we see in the country stores. I love how they look, and I thought they would be perfect for the Christmas season. So this is how the starlights are looking so far. I am going to give more coverage on the back side, and I'm going to give more coverage on the front as well as needed. Here you can see how the light is shining through so far. Continue to add as much paint as you'd like. You just want to make sure you can allow some of the light to shine through. I really love how these have turned out. They really do look like they have a rusty old finish, and I like the hint of light that shines through. So I am going to give these little lights a coat of some matte decoupage. I don't want to risk the paint chipping off. And then I'm going to show you how everything looks all set up together. And here is how our primitive old country farmhouse candles and starlights look all together. I love how well this all turned out. It was definitely worthwhile. I have been eyeing up those candles for a long time, but they are not cheap. I'm glad I have found a way to achieve the same look as those expensive candles that you see in all the gift shops. I would love to know if this is something that you would like to try. I want to say a big thank you to Mom and Sewell and all my fellow creators, and I want to thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day. See you in the next one. Bye.